There's plenty of Habs hockey to talk about today, but first we're going to stop after we've heard some sincere and heartfelt words from the team's revered leader. This week we're going to take a pause for Price. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to this week's episode of Habs Hockey Report right here at All Habs Hockey Magazine, part of Rocket Sports Media. We are so glad that you're here with us today. If you're new to the show, which according to our metrics from last week, there are a lot of you who are new to the show and the channel. And so welcome to all of you. My name is Amy Johnson. Not only am I your host of the show each and every Thursday, but I'm also the lead correspondent over at our Laval Rocket centric site, AHLreport.com. This show can be found at allhabs.net and of course right here on the All Habs YouTube channel. We're so glad that you're here with us. It's going to be a fun show today. Like I said, there's so many new subscribers this week. I want to say thank you to all of you who have hit that subscribe button. All of you. Each and every one of you. And if you're one of those who maybe just stumbled across the channel, or maybe you've been watching for a few weeks and just haven't hit that subscribe button, what are you waiting for? Do it right now. Hit that subscribe button, tap that notification bell so that you never miss an episode. We put the call out last week for an All Habs roll call. We asked, you listened, we heard from fans all over the world, literally. We had someone writing in saying, greetings from Southwest Florida, who also happens to love the Slavkovsky-Jackeye relationship. Welcome to you from Southwest Florida. We then have Mr. T Valley Guy saying, I'm watching from Sweetheart, Alberta. We've got someone saying he's watching from Iceland, but that he is actually Slovakian. And he says, just so you know, in case we didn't know already, all Slovakians are Montreal fans because of Slavkovsky. We know that. Pierre Martel writing in saying, hi from Edmonton. Great to have you as well. And Yuri Zelenka with love from Slovakia. It's amazing how many Slovakian fans that we have acquired here at the channel thanks to Yuri Slavkovsky. So welcome to all of you. If you haven't let us know, we had another viewer who we're going to hear a comment from later in the show with his answer to last week's feedback forum question, who also kind of gave us a shout out from Moncton. So we've got Habs fans in Canada, in the US, and in Europe, across the world. Wherever you are watching from, let us know in the comments below. We'd be happy to welcome you to the show. And as I mentioned, we are going to get to your answers to last week's feedback forum question later on in our Habs Fan Hub segment. This week's question, we're going to have a little bit of fun, folks, because guess what? Halloween is on Monday. Halloween's kind of one of my favorite holidays of the year because it's just fun. I mean, it's candy, it's spooky, and you get to dress up as one of your favorite characters or be something funny. And so my feedback forum question for all of you this week is, what are you dressing up as for Halloween? Drop it in the comments below. I want to know. I want to see the creativity. If you have pictures of your Halloween costume, you can send them to me at amy@allhabs.net. That's amy@allhabs.net. If you send those, I'll put them on the show next week so that we can all see the great costumes that you all come up with. But want to know, what are you dressing up as, or what are you dressing your kid up as, or your pet? I want to know. I love Halloween. Been a bit of a kind of steady as she goes week for the Montreal Canadiens after their games against Dallas and Minnesota. A bit of a slowed down, kind of take a minute and breathe schedule compared to the first week of the season that they went through. So only 2 games between then and now, and it's not been stellar, but it's okay. it's just okay. We've seen Slavkovsky has been out of the lineup due to an upper body injury that's yet undisclosed. We're not sure yet when he is going to be back in action, but we're hoping it's going to be sooner rather than later. He's been held out of the lineup ever since. It's possible that he actually was injured in the course of scoring his first NHL goal. But hopefully he'll be back in the lineup soon. We do see that the Canadiens are about to head out on a small road trip. And it looks like Armia and Edmondson are traveling on that trip. It's very possible that Edmondson is getting close to returning to the lineup. We saw Corey Schooneman get returned to the Laval Rocket this week in advance of this road trip. So that gives kind of all indications that perhaps Joel Edmondson is finally about to get ready to make his season debut, which I think would be a welcome thing for the Blue Liners, for the Montreal Canadiens. We've seen Cole Caulfield is kind of steady as she goes. He's scored his 5th goal of the season this past week, and doing some of the right things, but there's also been some horrific play. Jonathan Drouin has just been, I really hope they're keeping him in the lineup so that somebody somewhere thinks miraculously that he could add to their lineup to maybe showcase him for a trade shortly down the road. Mike Hoffman is one that fans have been clamoring to move along as well. Dadonov has been kind of not impressive either. So that we're starting to see, now that things have settled down, we've settled into a bit of a groove. We're a couple of weeks into the season now. All of the hype to start the season is behind us. We're starting to see the Canadiens kind of settle in, and we're seeing where the weaknesses are. We're seeing with wide open eyes the changes that need to be made. And boy, talk about an anemic power play. The power play for the Montreal Canadiens is the worst I think we've seen it in a very long time. And it's not showing any signs of getting any better. Something has to happen there, as Rick Stevens mentioned in his most recent game recap after Tuesday's game against Minnesota, that Alex Burrows is obviously doesn't have the answers for the Canadiens' power play. It's just looking lackluster. It's looking a bit juvenile at times, and it's not doing anything. It's just not doing anything at all. So it'll be a bit of a test for Montreal going out on the road. They'll face Buffalo on Thursday night. They face the St. Louis Blues coming up on Saturday. They'll also be in Winnipeg, and they'll also be facing the Minnesota Wild on their home turf. As far as the other injuries, we did see Caden Gooley leave Tuesday night's game early after he took a shot with a puck to his left ear temple area. He was back on the ice the next morning for practice, so that's a good indication that nothing too serious there for Caden Gooley. But always scary when you see a player take a puck up in the head area like that. So hopefully we'll have some more exciting things to watch as the Habs hit the road. But really the big story this week was Carey Price. We've known ever since the summertime, Kent Hughes said at some point in the fall, we thought it was going to be at training camp, that Carey Price was going to sit down with himself and Kent Hughes and some of the team doctors and have a press conference. And that didn't materialize in training camp. It kind of left people scratching their heads a little bit. But it turns out that maybe it was just Carey Price needing to have his own answers before he could sit down in front of the media. And he did it by himself this week, talking to the press at Brassard and answering questions very calm, very comfortable. Typical Carey Price, not always going into great detail, a bit understated, but very calm. And he had a lot to say. He's talked about this before, how the options in front of him aren't necessarily encouraging. We've talked about it before on the show, there is a surgical option that he could take. However, as he reiterated at this press conference this week, he's the prognosis on the other side of that surgery isn't always great, and that's for people who haven't already had surgery on the knee, which he has. And going through this potential surgery leaves more question marks up in the air, not in terms of him being able to play again, but more in terms of what his quality of life in his personal life and for the rest of his life would be. And it throws up for Carey Price some red flags in terms of, wanting to be able to be active with his children and live a normal life, pain-free, and have the movement that he needs to play with his kids and be a good dad to his kids and be a good husband with his wife and really be an active part of the family. And so it sounds like Carey Price is leaning not towards taking this surgical route, but he still wants to try to continue this rehab process and see if he can get back to a place where he might be able to play. He still has a drive. He still would love to try to win a Stanley Cup. It was commendable for him to be able to come out and speak alone. There wasn't any backup and people to deflect for him on either side of him at that table. It was just him and reporters and cameras. And he did a great job with it. It's obviously been a difficult road for him. He's enjoying being around the team. He's says that he's talked to management about different ways that he can still be active with the team kind of behind the scenes and be active in the community. We wish him the best of luck. It's got to be a really tough decision. It's professional athletes have a different kind of drive, and it can't always be easy to tell yourself the best thing to do would be to not take the most aggressive action that you can to try to get short-term results. It takes a lot of patience and maturity. The other part that we saw come out with Carey Price this week was an exclusive interview that he did with The Athletic, where he finally opened up, even though it was his absolute right to not ever really open up to the public as to why he entered the player assistance program last fall, but he chose to, and spoke to The Athletic exclusively about why he entered the player assistance program. I remember there were a lot of people who were making the assumption that, Carey Price was a drug addict, and he was it was either cocaine or it was pain pills or it was. And it turns out it wasn't that. It was alcohol. And Price details in this exclusive interview about how, he just woke up one day last October and realized it was, the sixth or seventh consecutive day that he was waking up basically with a pretty bad hangover. And that he even says, here's an excerpt, "I wasn't a happy person. I wasn't being a good father. I was drinking a lot." He goes on to say a little bit later that he says, "And substance abuse has been a very big issue in First Nations communities. I've had friends and family that have passed away from it. So I could have done this privately. Nobody ever would have known about it. But at the end of the day, I was like, if I'm dealing with it, if I can lead by example and show that it's okay to reach out for help, maybe I could have gone out and stopped on my own. Yeah, maybe. But at the end of the day, I wanted to be able to show it's okay to ask for help." There's 2 points that I want to make here is that family is obviously very important to Carey Price, and the thing that really started to make him sit up and notice that something was wrong was that he felt that he wasn't there for his kids. And he even talks in this interview about how now, on the other side of the player assistance program, he values so much being able to wake up with a clear head on a Sunday morning and cook his kids pancakes. And that's a big statement for a dad to make. It's a big thing for a man to realize that that's what's important for him. And so I applaud him for understanding and realizing that he needed help getting back on the right path, and that he wanted to be a good member of his family in doing that. And also applauding him for choosing to make it a bit public and to make sure that other people understood that it's okay to ask for help, but also to come out and acknowledge publicly that alcohol abuse, as he says, is, quote, a very big issue in First Nations communities, and that Carey Price knows people close to him who have passed away from the substance abuse, and it's not something that's ever fun to talk about or comfortable to talk about, but the fact that Carey Price is taking the lead here and trying to set the example, both for just people in general, but also for people within the First Nations community, I think it's commendable. And we see a Carey Price who seems to be much more at peace and comfortable with himself, and that's a good thing. That's a good first step forward. So we just wanted to take a minute this week to pause for Price and acknowledge what he had the courage to do a year ago and what he's having the courage to do now. Carey Price has been such a leader for the Montreal Canadiens for a long time now, so we wish the best to Carey Price. On this week's Rocket Booster, I wish we could give a boost to the Rocket because, boy, it's not been fun down on the farm. The Laval Rocket dropping both of their games this past weekend on the road to the Wilkes-Barre Scranton Penguins as well as to the Bridgeport Islanders. They came home on Wednesday night to kick off a 6-game homestand and dropped their third consecutive game on the schedule, but also their third consecutive game against the Belleville Senators. Came back, made it close, but weren't able to finish it in the end. And what has been the theme? What has been the biggest problem this season? Penalties. They cannot seem to stay out of the box. And last night, 3 power play goals against. Belleville went 3 for 8 on the power play. I don't know what's worse on that statistic, the 8 power plays that Belleville had or the fact that they converted on 3 of them. And it was an unfortunate loss. Of course, head over to ahlreport.com. We always have a full game recap for each game so that you can keep an eye on what's happening with the prospects in Laval. But it's been a tough go of it. Laval is now 1-4-1 on the season. They've got 2 games against the Rochester Americans coming up on home ice this weekend, Friday night at 7 o'clock, and then an afternoon 3 o'clock matinee on Saturday. So we'll see if they're able to come up with a win on either of those occasions. There was a bit of personnel movement when it was announced that from the Canadiens that they had traded young forward Cam Hillis to the Chicago Blackhawks in exchange for former 2018 first-round pick defenseman Nicolas Baudin. This for me is a real big head scratcher. Cam Hillis, yes, has been playing in Trois-Rivières. It's the second season in a row that the organization has sent him to the ECHL to begin the season. This is a young prospect who, was he going to make big impact at the NHL level at some point? Probably not. But we don't really know. For my liking, he was never given enough of a substantial chance to be put into positions to succeed at the AHL level to actually grow his game. There were a lot of times when he was in the AHL that he was a healthy scratch. That's not helping a prospect. In this new era of development for the Montreal Canadiens, I would have liked to have seen actual Canadiens prospects get more chances than simply constantly getting sent down to the ECHL. And there's nothing against going to the ECHL if it's warranted, but Cam Hillis spent plenty of time in the ECHL last year. Would have liked to have seen him have the opportunity to stay in the AHL a little longer this year and perhaps get some better experience at that level. I've talked before about how I feel a lot of the free agent signings that were made this summer were not helpful for Canadiens prospects, and I feel that kind of came into play here a little bit. So Cam Hillis gets shipped out, and instead they bring in Nicolas Baudin, who does have a bit of NHL experience. He's more of kind of an NHL, AHL cusp. But he's a defender. Like Cam Hillis was a forward, Cam Hillis was a center. And there needs to be more of that development going on in the organization. There is a glut of defensemen in Laval right now who are young prospects. And so this to me was curious, particularly then I think the move, lots of people were, Great move by Kent Hughes. To me, it's a bit of a head scratcher, particularly when a lot of people missed the second thing that happened after that. What happened after that? That announcement was made, and not 10 minutes later, Laval announced that they had made an AHL trade with the Rockford Ice Hogs, who happened to be the AHL affiliate of the Chicago Blackhawks. And in that trade, they brought over forward Riley McKay in exchange for future considerations. Riley McKay is a guy who's played in the AHL, ECHL. He's basically like Cam Hillis 2.0. We wish Cam Hillis the best of luck. He was a very nice young man. Every time we had interactions with him, seemed to be a hard worker, and hopefully he'll find some success in Chicago. And we'll see what happens with Nicolas Baudin. Maybe he'll help spark a little bit of something extra with Laval to get in the win column here this weekend. It'll be interesting. JF Houle and his crew are going to be wanting a win very, very soon. All right, it is Habs Fan Hub time. This is where we get to hear from you at home. All of you watching, this is where you as Habs fans get to make your voice heard, whether you've got pictures that you've tagged, #ShowYourHabs, of you or your friends and family in your best Habs gear. If you've got a question for the All Habs mailbag, drop that down below. But every week I offer you a feedback forum question where you get to make your voice heard on the topic of the week. And this week, we're going to have a little fun with it. It's Halloween weekend. What are you dressing up as for Halloween? I want to know. Or your pet, or your kids. What's the costume du jour for this year? I can't wait to hear all about it. Last week, we talked in depth about the reverse retro jersey designs that came out around the league, and in particular, the Montreal Canadiens and their Montreal Expos themed color and jersey design. And I asked the question, do you like it? Opposite ends of the spectrum on this one from all of you. We have JJ who says, I like the Expo colors. Okay, well, there's one on the vote for yes, I like it. Then we have someone who says the jersey is fine. Maybe could have added some red striping to make them a little more dynamic. And I agree with this, because I did say on the show last week that I find these jerseys while I appreciate the nod to the Expos, I find them to be a bit bland looking. Some red striping on the elbow would have dynamic is a good word to use there. Robert Levine says, I don't like that blue at all. Don't like it. So it's ping pong. We're going back and forth here. Some like it, some hate it. What's our next viewer says? He says, it's a salute to the Expos. No complaints with the powder blue. And Dave says, I'm not a big fan of the powder blue retro Habs jersey myself. However, I will always remain a huge Expos fan and appreciate the Habs showing them some love. He also adds he thinks the jersey will look better on Youppi than it will on the entire team. So he says powder blue is not very interesting. So opposite views from our viewers just about every time. Yes, I love it. No, I don't. Yes, I think it's great. No, I hate it. And that's the great thing about the Habs Fan Hub, is that we get to hear from you and why you like things and why you don't. And that's what we're all about here at Habs Hockey Report, is hearing from you, our fans, and the Montreal Canadiens fans around the world. That's going to do it for this week. If you happen to miss last week's show, which is one of our most watched episodes ever, then check that out right here. And then be sure to come back next Thursday for another episode of Habs Hockey Report.